The words toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
I think it's an overreaction to a sad cultural phenomenon, which is kind of this. I think we're in agreement that there seems to be this attack on masculinity, Christian masculinity.
100%.
Specifically, that's been devalued, and in part that's been just imposed upon the Christian man. But in part, I think it's been the failure of a number of men across generations. You see a lot of this has been my experience, to struggle with fatherlessness. You know, I don't have a relationship with my father. He wasn't in my life really growing up. When he was, it was tense or awkward or difficult or problematic. So I didn't have anybody to show me what it meant to be a man. So you kind of hit a point in your life where you're struggling with your identity as a man, and you feel insecure, so you kind of overcompensate, and you see a number of characters. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying anything maybe by name here, but the prime example that everybody refers to is like Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
You know, this idea of this unapologetic kind of I get what I want, self-made, all of the tropes, all the trite ideas of what a man is, everything that you see on like posters with muscle cars and women and money and chasing after worldly things, that the world is, your grasp on what the world has to offer is what makes you a man. Is maybe not even the best way to describe toxic masculinity, but it certainly paints a picture, operates around the boundaries of what that is.
But that's not something new, right? I mean, we all grew up watching James Bond. It was always about the cars, the women, you know, the power, and just not caring about laws, the regulation. You know, it's all part of the charming character. I just feel like today we're being kind of pushed into two completely opposite, overreacted images of a man, right? And I think that we've seen the whole toxic masculinity with the women, the money, the cars, and all that, but we're being shoved now to a polar opposite, which is almost like removing a man from being a male. You know what I mean? That it's almost wrong to be strong-willed, you know, to have opinions, to have even faith, or to have, you know, truth. And don't you find that that's another dangerous way to go?
Yeah. Culture comes in these waves of overcorrection. We go too far in one direction, and we run as hard as we can in the opposite direction. So the opposite of that is the kind of the weak, effeminate man. And this plays out in culture, saying like, oh, because fathers have been absent and children are still being raised, now we can say, well, fathers aren't necessary. The role of a man, you don't need to lead. Your role is the same as the rest of the people in your family. And it downplays and ignores the uniqueness of the way that men and women bear the image of God in their own special and unique way. So yeah, it's an overcorrection in the opposite direction.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because when and we do this as priests, right? We counsel so many young men and so many married men, and oftentimes they'll be put in positions where I will be called to spiritually guide a person who is, you know, approaching the age of my own biological father. And we'll see that like this is a very serious problem that hits at every single one of those levels. The world seems to be presenting two polar opposites, two extremes of the same spectrum. One where you have, again, that toxic masculinity. The other one is the effeminate, weak man who seems to shun everything that it means to be a man. And there's virtually no balance. And to your point, because men have failed to provide, men don't need to provide. Because men have failed to protect, we don't need men to protect. Because men have failed to be fathers, we don't need men to be fathers. And in the process of all this, what is really happening? We find ourselves in a situation where masculinity in general, as designed and intentioned by God, is slowly becoming this thing that is so rare. And we have men who desire deeply to be men, They don't know how to become the men that God has called them to be. And this is not just at the level of your gender. This is at the level of the titles that God has given to men. You know what it means for a man to be a son, a brother, a husband, a father. Those are godly titles that God has given to us. And when we don't know how to reclaim Christian masculinity, we fail at all of those levels.
It's really interesting too, with, you look at media portrayals of men, like the sitcom dad. They're always this like blundering buffoon.
Right.
I know. I'm like, when's the last time that I saw like a competent present father? Even like, you go way back to I don't know if it's in the 60s or 70s, like All in the Family, like Archie Bunker.
Yeah.
And then a more contemporary show like Modern Family, like Phil Dunphy. It's just kind of like goofy, immature, childish dad. And like, he's funny, you know, like I think he's a funny character. Mm-hmm. But when I think about it, I'm like, that's not the kind of dad it's not kind of husband that I want to be. Mm-hmm. And, you know, to an extent, because I've been conditioned by like this media wave of these things and just my own experience of failures in the realm of masculinity. Like, even as we talk about this, I catch myself thinking like, who am I to even talk about this? Do I even know what it means to be a man? You know?
So let's go there. That was actually my next thought process. What is Orthodox Christian masculinity? What does that even mean? If you had someone in one of your youth groups come to you, a father, one of your, you know, parishioners or one of the youth, and tell you, you know, Father, tell me, what is an Orthodox Christian man? What's the answer to that? Both of you, actually.
Yeah. I like how you both look to me like we priest Ray is.
I'll share right after you.
Okay, fair.
Just don't be contradictory.
Yeah. I mean, it's a man who images Christ. I think the more that I think about this and reflect on this, the role of the Christian man, of the Orthodox Christian man, is a role of priesthood. Obviously, it's different than an ordained priest in the church, but you are the priest of your home. Mm-hmm. You lead your family in your family prayers, and like, what is the real role of the priest? It is to sacrifice, and so it's to be the last one out. You know, it's the I'm reading this book right now. I've talked about it 1,000 times. Every conversation I've had with Abuna since I've been here, we talk about this book, The Ethics of Beauty.
Yeah.
By Dr. Timothy Petitsis. It's this incredible book that I'm still trying to grasp. But at a point in the book, he gets into this idea of gender and differences, and the way that really sacrifice in priesthood is really a calling of both genders expressed in different ways.
That's right.
And he references this great Greek, I believe he's Greek, Saint Silouan the Athonite.
That's right.
And who had these sayings of like, everyone will be saved but me. I will be the only one lost. And he's interceding still for the rest of the world to be saved, to sacrifice himself for that. And the saying comes out of it, keep your mind in hell and do not despair. And it's like, can you do that for your family? Anybody who does that perfectly, which is very few of us, is living into the fullness of manhood and masculinity, because that's who Christ is. He's the one that sacrifices everything himself, descends into hell, does not despair, and comes out the victor on the behalf of the world.
So forgive me, Father, before you answer, do me a favor, Derek, dumb it down for me, okay? Yeah. That's an incredibly deep and beautiful answer. But now someone comes to you and says, I'm a brother.
Yeah.
What's that really mean? I'm a father. What's that really mean? Like day to day, right? I'm a son. What's that really mean to my mother and to my father, right? Yeah. Because it is beautiful, but day to day, what does that mean?
Are you, number one, are you looking to Christ? Are your eyes fixed on the cross? Are you really internalizing that? Are you consistent in that? Because if you are, the rest of everything else that I just said, whether you express it the same way, think about it the same way, or even understand those words, will come to follow. It'll enable you to make sacrifices. And this could be the smallest thing of like, I'm a dad, I just got done with work, I'm tired, I really just want to like kick my feet up and watch TV. Yeah. Or are you going to go be present to your children? Are you going to play with them for a little while? You're going to listen to them. Your wife's been, I'm just me thinking of my own kind of situation in life. Like my wife is home with her children, and she homeschools her children. She's been dealing with that all day. Like, am I sacrificing my stress and my frustration? Am I bearing that cross as a sacrifice for her to have time for herself to go do something else? Am I saying at the end of the night when the kids are losing their ever-loving minds and hitting each other and screaming, no, we say our prayers together as a family before bed, you know, even though I would rather just get you to bed and be done with it. So on the smallest level, are you thinking of yourself less? Or are you thinking of others more? Are you making sacrifice for them?
I think that actually summarizes really beautifully what Paul says in the book of Philippians when he says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. And then he goes on to explain this mind that was in Christ Jesus, who did not consider a robbery to be equal with God, but he emptied himself. And this self-emptying is the role. And again, I know everybody is going to say, this is the role of every Christian, absolutely, but it has to be embodied differently in men. Because a man is supposed to be able to look at Christ and say everything that he has done towards his Father in heaven, towards his mother, towards his brothers, towards his own bride, the church. He lays out the perfect example of what it means for us to be men. And this does not have to be as complicated as people make it out to be. Look at his life. Look at the way that he empties himself. No one would ever say that Christ was weak. In him was strength perfectly manifested when he stood up for the sake of the truth against those who would try to destroy his bride. He would not allow the tyrant, which is death, to overcome his bride. So what does he do? He faces the tyrant. He defeats the tyrant. He conquers death, even if he has to get to his opponent by going up obediently on the cross and shedding his blood for the sake of his bride. There are so many examples that we can completely untangle. We can take a look at his gentleness with the Samaritan woman. We could take a look at his boldness when he's speaking to the Pharisees. We can take a look at the love that he shows people like Zacchaeus or the woman that was thrown at his feet. All of these things are meant to be embodied by men, but unfortunately, what we fail to realize is that the world that we live in is so incredibly encapsulated by the warfare of the enemy, the devil, that he recognizes, and he's very smart in the way that he approaches this. If he destroys Christian masculinity, he's destroyed the possibility of the icon of Christ on earth. Christ is the goal, and we see him reflected right before us, and he models that behavior. He has to be the one that we keep our eyes on.